Speaker for this session is graduate student at Purdue University on the topic of LGBTQ rights, Michael Simrak. Michael.
Hello everyone, I'm Michael Simrak and I'm the secretary at Pride Lafayette. And before I begin, I just wanted to take the moment to talk about what Pride Lafayette is and what we do for the LGBT community in the greater Lafayette area. The mission of Pride Lafayette is to continually educate and promote awareness of diversity, health, culture, and acceptance of individuals based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Members of the LGBT community work together to reach the goal of understanding and non-discrimination through education. We offer a safe, clean, accessible, and private space for members of the LGBT community to meet, a library collection of over 750 books on various topics dealing with the LGBT community, our own art gallery called Spectrum Gallery, which is a member of the Tippecanoe Arts Federation with exhibitions featuring local and regional artists, access to an attorney for transgender individuals who need name changes and other legal services. We are a registered national safe place for youth in crisis. We provide confidential HIV testing through a partnership with Aspire that takes place on the second Tuesday of every month from 6 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. And all of this is done totally by volunteers. We are completely reliant on the volunteers who run our group and members of the community who also lend their support. So I wanted to talk to you today about the state of LGBT rights in the United States under President Donald Trump. So during the campaign, specifically on June 14th, 2016, Donald Trump tweeted his support for the LGBT community. He said, "Thank you to the LGBT community. I will fight for you while Hillary brings in more people that will threaten your freedoms and beliefs." Instead, what has happened is the election of a notoriously anti-LGBT vice president, the appointment of an anti-LGBT attorney general, the appointment of an anti-LGBT education secretary, the appointment of an anti-LGBT Supreme Court justice, the appointment of an anti-LGBT Housing and Urban Development Secretary, the erasure of LGBTQ rights from the White House and State Department websites, the revocation of Obama-era guidance on equal access to facilities for transgender students, the revocation through executive order of the Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces Act, which removes the requirement that federal contractors comply with 14 civil rights laws, including those that prevent discrimination against LGBT individuals. He was also the first sitting president to address the Values Voters Summit, which is hosted by the Family Research Council, which is a Southern Poverty Law Center designated anti-LGBT hate group. We've also witnessed the mass resignation of the president's HIV/AIDS advisory panel, an attempted ban on transgender people serving in the military, and most recently the creation of a Health and Human Services Department Conscious and Religious Freedom Division, which will allow medical providers to deny abortion-related services as well as treatments to LGBT people, specifically gender-affirming services, on the grounds of religious objections. The true threat to the LGBT community in the United States is not some foreign ideology. It's not ISIS. It's not Muslim immigrants. It's the ideology of our president and his supporters and his party, this government, and throughout the public. We also have to remember that everything is interconnected, and attacks on other communities are also attacks on the LGBT community. The travel ban includes LGBT refugees, which is essentially a death sentence for those individuals. Attacks on healthcare impact those living with HIV or those who may be transitioning. The blossoming of racist sentiments in this country also affects LGBT people of color, which adds another layer of discrimination that they must work against. Religious freedom exemptions hurt abortion access for women, but also reduces access to health services for LGBTQ people. And even to tie it into net neutrality, LGBT groups, local groups like Pride Lafayette, or national groups like HRC or the Transgender Law Center would all be impacted if our data was not allowed to flow at the same rate as other websites. And also, attacks on immigrants impact LGBT immigrants who are living in this country right now. It's also important to keep in mind that while Trump has created an environment that nurtures and supports this hostility in the open, this hate has existed since before him and has only continued to grow under him. According to the 2016 Hate Crimes and Statistics Report published by the FBI, 1,076 out of 6,063 single bias incidents, which is about 17.7%, were motivated by sexual orientation. This is a 2% increase from 2015. Trans people are particularly at risk. 124 incidents, which is about 2%, were motivated by real or perceived gender identity. When this is broken down to look at confirmed cases of anti-trans bias, as opposed to those who are just gender nonconforming, crimes against trans Americans has increased to 105 incidents in 2016 from 73 in 2015. This is a 43% increase. These numbers are actually likely to be much higher because not all jurisdictions include these categories in hate crimes reporting. 2016 saw the murder of 23 trans Americans, the majority of which were trans women of color, and up to that point had been the highest reported in record. In 2017, that number has increased to 28. We should expect more of this to come. There will be more attacks on LGBT rights and trans rights in particular under the guise of religious freedom protections. This will lead to the overall erosion of LGBT rights in the United States. An upcoming decision on the Supreme Court on the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado case could decide the fate of public accommodation rights for all LGBT Americans. However, with the addition of Gorsuch, we may lose this case. I would like to end on a somewhat hopeful note. There have been victories, and we have been consistently fighting back the repeal of LGBT rights across the country. We have successfully won for the right for transgender Americans to serve openly in the armed forces in the Supreme Court. We have successfully gotten questions about LGBT people put back onto the census after they had been removed. And the most important thing is that the modern LGBT rights movement was born out of a riot. And the legacy influences our willingness to fight against hate and discrimination tooth and nail for all of us until we achieve full equality and acceptance. And now I wanted to leave you all with a call to action. First, we have to stay vigilant. We have to pay attention to the news, whether we like it or not, whether it makes us angry or sad. We have to actively engage with it. We have to tell people what we've seen, what's important, and what's to come. We can't fall into indifference, and as much as it may hurt, we have to always stay angry. You have to get to know your representatives. Annoy them. Turn your anger into something constructive and call them, email them, write them letters, go to their town halls, show up at their coffee hours, tell them you will not stand for any attacks on LGBT rights. You have to live your support for the LGBT community. Don't tolerate discrimination in public, at home, or at work. Educate yourself so you can educate others. And then also, you must support your local Pride centers. Pride Lafayette is the only LGBT center in the greater Lafayette area. We need you to donate your time, we need you to come to your events, and if possible, we need your donations, because that is what we need to survive if we are to help fight against politicians like Donald Trump and others who are just waiting to fight the LGBT community in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you to all these speakers. And, you know, just in looking at the different themes and all the different talks that we've heard so far today, I think that there's an overwhelming sense of anger in the community, but the thing that I am most hopeful about is I listen to the empathy in this room. And you hear stories from people that might not have the same background, the same story as you, but an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And I'm just so grateful that this community has that heart.